Welcome to Middleway News. We provide the latest news highlights and summaries each day to give you a quick snapshot of what's happening today and why.
And then what about Hillary versus Kamala?
Oh, God. Well, Hillary was smart. There's that.
Kamala Harris is often criticized for having no significant accomplishments in her political career, despite being the vice president for nearly 4 years. She is described as the first political candidate created entirely by the media. In 2019, she was viewed as the most liberal senator, even more so than Bernie Sanders.
The problem for Kamala Harris is she's not smart. She's not a deep thinker. She's very surface level. Yeah, she's giggling just like that all the time.
At her debate versus Trump, she even dodged the first and simplest question: is the country better off than it was 4 years ago? She seems afraid to speak with reporters, and she will not do interviews. To date, she has only one solo interview. What is she trying to hide? She has promoted joy, and she says her values haven't changed. But what exactly are those? I don't know, and neither do you. Ms. Harris is secretive and unavailable to answer serious questions. It's like she has ghosted the entire country. In addition, the vice president is utterly dependent on advisors who dictate what she will say and do, just like President Biden is.
Tell us how you feel. Really, be honest.
And it's a cover. It's an obvious cover, right? It's like she gets to the point where she doesn't know what she's saying. Even she doesn't know what she's saying. And it's like, ah! And so you feel uncomfortable watching her. And then she gave her first interview to CNN. And suddenly, if that's drunk Kamala, suddenly we're dealing with hungover Kamala. Like, my values haven't changed.
Kamala Harris has historically struggled with public support and has never polled well in general. Her candidacy is often attributed to media manipulation rather than grassroots support. Even Black Lives Matter protested against Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party for her coronation and undemocratic rise to prominence as the Democratic Party's nominee without a vote or democratic process. Kamala Harris refused to answer specific questions at the debate with Trump about how she would solve the many problems Kamala and President Biden have created over their nearly 4 years in office, such as open borders, punishing prices and inflation for consumers, Gaza, Ukraine, and social disorder. Kamala had nothing credible or substantial to say. She dodged almost every question. The only concrete thing she said was that she would give away trillions of federal dollars to help various people that would put us in more debt. We need solutions to the mess Kamala and Biden created.
Like, clearly somebody had told her, you cackle, we're out of here.
Yeah.
Right?
What did you think about her bringing her emotional support white guy?
Exactly. Her emotional support governor. He was her big white blankie.
As an American, I'm confused how the 1.4% inflation rate Trump left the country in 2020 turned into 9% under Biden-Harris in under 4 years. It would be great if Harris could explain that. It would be great if an unbiased journalist could ask her that question. She would probably reply, "I grew up a middle-class kid," which is a memorized answer she gave at the debate and her only solo interview. It tells us nothing. She has no solutions.
I intend on extending a tax cut, repealing that tax bill they just passed. And also looking at estate taxes are going to have to go up.
Everything from a 70 to 80% tax rate.
I think that's fantastic. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking.
She was big on defund the police.
For too long, the status quo thinking has been you get more safety by putting more cops on the street. Well, that's wrong.
She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border.
I am in favor of saying that we're not going to treat people who are undocumented across the border as criminals. That's correct.
Abolish ICE.
Yeah, we need to probably think about starting from scratch.
She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had. A horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad.
Bidenomics is working. It's working.
Kamala Harris has been a controversial figure due to her support for sanctuary cities and the defunding of police movements. During her time as San Francisco's district attorney, she faced severe criticism for not seeking the death penalty for a gang member who had killed a police officer. The San Francisco Police Officers Association has consistently refused to endorse her in any race. Just remember that the same people who told you Joe Biden is sharp as ever and he's mentally fit are the same people telling you Kamala is striking or the savior of humanity. Imagine her negotiating with Russian President Putin. Putin, why should I agree to a ceasefire? Kamala, I was raised in a middle class. If she's too scared to sit down and actually answer some questions on policies, immigration, or economy, how will she ever have the strength to face any national leaders to keep this country from WW3?
Being the commander-in-chief is the most important responsibility the president has. It made me bluntly sick to my stomach to hear her on that stage last night and during her convention speech to talk about how much she cares about our military. It made me sick to my stomach because I had just spent some time with those Gold Star families at Arlington Cemetery. I have friends who were deployed with that group of Marines who were standing there mourning the loss of their brothers. It made me sick.
Kamala Harris has often been criticized for avoiding direct answers to critical issues during debates and interviews. She has not clearly defined her vision for the country and has instead focused on abstract concepts like promoting joy. Her inability to provide substantial policy solutions has been a consistent point of contention. Kamala Harris is doing everything she can to act her way through this election. Propaganda media is already handing her awards, trying to manufacture momentum like it's Hollywood. But this isn't a movie. We're not casting an actor for a scripted role written by the shadow government. We're choosing our commander-in-chief and our future. Look at their record, your life, and ask, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Under the Biden-Harris administration, inflation has increased significantly, rising from 1.4% during Trump's tenure to over 9%. Despite the economic challenges, clear explanations or solutions from Kamala Harris have been lacking. The impact of these inflationary pressures has been a major concern for American citizens.
And last-minute conversions aren't going to hide the fact that these liberal Democrats don't represent traditional Democrats anymore. You know, national Democrats used to fight for the working families of America, and now all they seem to fight for are the special interests and their own left-wing ideology. We have a tremendous opportunity this year to join with a lot of disaffected Democrats and independents to send a message back to Washington.
Kamala Harris's public image is heavily shaped by media portrayal, which often leads to public confusion about her actual policies and capabilities. She is perceived as being highly reliant on advisors, similar to President Biden, which raises questions about her leadership and independence. When Trump left office in 2020, we had the most secure border in 40 years. Mortgage rates were below 3%. Gas was $1.87. The Abraham Accords, energy independent, and Kamala Harris and Biden screwed it all up. The withdrawal from Afghanistan was a disgrace, and Kamala and Biden gave billions of equipment and facilities to China.
You had two parties. You had the GOP, which was the party of the rich, the party of corporations, the party of tax cuts, country clubs, okay? The Chamber of Commerce, right, is what working class people will call it. And then you had the Democrats. Now, the Democrats used to be the party of labor. They used to be the party of the working class 50, 60 years ago. But they lost those voters to the college-educated elites and then the dependent poor.
Right.
So the Democratic Party now is bifurcated, right? They cater to college-educated, credentialed elites and then to people who are poor and live on the government and cannot support themselves. What that meant was there was no party representing 60% of Americans who are working class, middle class, working really hard, trying to make it. Trump showed up and he spoke directly to those people. And I'm sorry, Bill, but he made a difference for them.
The central theme is Harris and Biden have been destroying our country, and our nation has been in a radical decline ever since Harris and Biden took power in 2020. And if Kamala could have done anything to fix it, why hasn't she done it? What has she been doing for 4 years? Kamala Harris said at the debate that she and President Biden inherited a mess. What a lie. The truth is, no, Kamala Harris, you didn't. You inherited low gas prices, a secure border, a vaccine for COVID. You inherited the biggest Mideast change of a lifetime, the Abraham Accords, and now everything has gone to crap since you, Kamala, and Biden took over. Kamala's policies have and are destroying our country.
What do you think of Kamala?
She has demonstrated through her time as vice president, U.S. Senator, Attorney General of California, District Attorney of San Francisco, in every position that she held where she had the opportunity to put the interests of the people she was supposed to be serving first, she put her own political interests first and clearly does not believe in the Constitution and fundamental freedoms. This was what I warned people against in 2019, is she is incapable and unfit to be president and commander-in-chief. She would be very dangerous in that position, not only because she will be easily manipulated and controlled by those unelected powers that be, but also would immediately feel like she needs to exert and show strength, and that would come at an incredibly high cost to my brothers and sisters in uniform, to our country, and quite frankly, to the world.
The economic impact under the Biden-Harris administration has been notable, with significant increases in inflation and cost of living. Public dissatisfaction continues to grow as many believe that the administration's policies have exacerbated these problems. Despite various appearances and speeches, concrete solutions have been lacking. What has Kamala been doing for 4 years? What has she done her entire career? Nothing but make things worse. She is a fraudulent politician who is all fluff and no substance. She is a compulsive liar and a manipulative con artist.
Do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid. My mother raised my sister and me.
Kamala Harris was all about your family, all about what's happening to America's working families, to America's middle class.
Someone who worked at McDonald's, someone who understands what it's like to be in the middle class.
I worked at McDonald's too. I still have the burn from the fryer basket to prove it. These are nice stories, but they're not policies or facts relevant to struggling Americans. Plus, overall inflation, it's still up almost 20% since Biden and Harris took office. Food's up 21.8%, rent's up 22.8%, car insurance, oh my gosh, up 55%, I can attest to that. Inflation is highest, by the way, in Chicago, New York, Detroit, and Philly. What do they all have in common? So Kamala raised working class, that's great. But this economy is somehow good for middle-class Americans?
Joe Biden is one of my most favorite people. And I see him making some of the most important, difficult decisions that any human being on earth would have to make. He's seen it all. He's seen it happen before. He knows that what he's got to do is based on what is the right thing to do for the people right now. And I think the American people have benefited from it, which is why I say he has a bold vision, because he understands the importance of this moment to get things done.
The Wall Street Journal did a great piece a couple days ago, just taking that census data that just was released about real median incomes. And the sad truth is that from 2019 to today, Americans have gotten poorer, especially hard hit, the middle class, urban Americans, Black Americans, Latino. The numbers are depressing, but she worked at McDonald's.
Yeah, the data's pretty tough, and it's factual. Earnings power is down. People are being paid less after an inflated basis, and all services and commodities that most families use are up between 21 and 25%. So that is actually probably the most important aspect of this race is how's that going to get fixed? It's the economy. It's always the economy. You know that classic line, it's the economy, stupid? Well, it is the economy. And I think more focus should be put on that, particularly on policy.
How are you feeling about Pennsylvania?
I am feeling very good about Pennsylvania because there are a lot of people in Pennsylvania who deserve to be seen and heard. That's why I'm here in Johnstown, and I will be continuing to travel around.
She looks loaded. They be saying she drunk. She acting loaded. They be saying she drunk. She just awkward.
Been acting like that.
No. I call it when I see it. I've never seen her act like that right there.
What did she even mean by that, though? Y'all deserve to be heard. She's always talking about
she don't be talking about shit. I'm sorry. Like, she couldn't even give the voters a real reason to vote for her. I was watching this video on X. She was like, I'm excited about Pennsylvania because there's good people here and y'all deserve to be heard.
Like,
shut your ass up, man. They deserve to be heard. It's crazy
I
that
cast my vote for you.
It's frustrating to me.
deserve to be heard.
No, listen, this is something that I find frustrating. She can go up there and talk about nothing, and then her constituents and people that support her are just so geeked about that. Like, she didn't say nothing.
It's hard. And how she went around that question was so bad. I think I have the clip.
She be dancing. She's good at that.
Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
Yes or no?
When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people, and that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy.
So
she didn't answer that at
you
all.
basically
I said that.
Man, we watched this clip the day after, and I remember when she started answering this question, he asked it. I said yes or no, bit. I'm sorry, y'all. I didn't mean to say that. It really slipped. It really slipped.
This is an extraordinary election cycle, and I'd say as an investor, I have to deal with who's ever in the White House on November 6th. And I have to try and figure out what the policies are of both candidates. I have no information from Harris yet, and I can't believe in an election cycle, this will be the first time in modern history, that a potential presidential candidate has not talked to the press. I don't know why she's not talking to you. I don't know why she's not talking to every outlet, because we're not getting any information. I have no information.
At the debate the other night, you talked about creating an opportunity economy. I wonder if we can drill down on that a little bit. When we talk about bringing down prices and making life more affordable for people, what are one or two specific things you have in mind for that?
Well, I'll start with this. I grew up a middle-class kid. My mother raised my sister and me. She worked very hard. So I was raised as a middle-class kid. And she was able to finally save up enough money to buy our first house when I was a teenager. I grew up in a community.
Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
Yes or no?
When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid. And
I'm worried about something else far more important, and I think everybody in this election, regardless of who you want to vote for, should think about this. What is the #1 export of America? Is it a good or a service? Is it technology, oil and gas? No, none of those. The #1 export of America is the American dream. It has been that way for 200 years. There's a reason half the globe's wealth is invested here, and there's a reason people risk their lives to get into the United States. It's the American dream.
Well, I'll start with this. I grew up a middle-class kid. My mother raised my sister and me. She worked very hard.
Now, let's just talk about one policy I'm gravely concerned about. Taxing uncapitalized gains, which destroys capital formation. The reason people come here and why they invest here is to deploy their capital. Now, I got to know what that's about. Is that even a realistic idea? I can't believe that, because that would basically decimate the American dream.
I grew up a middle-class kid. I was raised as a middle-class kid.
So if that's a reality, if that's a real policy, and I wish somebody would ask both candidates what their plans are on taxation, because a 28% corporate tax rate, in the addition to state taxes, would make America very uncompetitive in the G20. And we'd start losing companies like we did when the taxes were that high. They all went to Ireland, particularly the pharma companies. I ask everybody to remember that. Policy matters.
My mother raised my sister and me. She worked very hard. I grew up a middle-class kid. I was raised as a middle-class kid. And I grew up a middle-class kid. I was raised as a middle-class kid. And
so start asking your candidates about policy. It doesn't matter in terms of kumbaya or how you feel about this or that. What matters is policy, and we don't have any. So I'm really concerned. I need those two things I need to know.
Well,
Thank you for watching the Middleway News Daily Update.
Thank you for experiencing today's Middleway News Daily Update. We hope you enjoyed today's top news highlights and summaries. Be sure to check out our other Middleway News services, products, summaries, updates, videos, podcasts, and more.